Shipping is the heartbeat of global trade, moving goods, opening markets, connecting the world. But 10 years can transform an industry, setting a new direction and new challenges. Over the past decade, shipping has stepped up to chart a new course towards a low-carbon future. Not through a single route, but by many possible pathways. Responding to a world that's becoming more complex and less predictable. Stricter requirements, growing stakeholder expectations, and a regulatory and geopolitical landscape in constant motion have tested the industry at every turn. In times like these, clarity really matters. That's why, for the past 10 years, DNV has published the Maritime Forecast to 2050, guiding the industry through its options. Providing insights grounded in evidence, practical scenarios, and analytical tools, bringing greater clarity to complex decisions at the intersection of regulation, technology, and economics. As the industry tested solutions, evaluated their trade-offs, and scaled proven approaches, the Maritime Forecast evolved alongside it, learning from the experience and feeding new findings into an expanding pool of knowledge. Now, efficiency gains have become foundational. Technologies have moved from concept to reality, and new and flexible fuel options have gained market share. More than 4,800 alternative fuel-capable vessels. Over 100 installations harnessing the wind for propulsion. Close to 2,000 ships powered by batteries. Alternative fuel supply and charging solutions in key ports. Operating, scaling, and expanding, these are visible signs of real advancements. The 10th edition of DNV's Maritime Forecast marks a moment to recognize all that the industry has achieved together, to reflect on the momentum gained and the foundations now being built for the years ahead, to understand the role each of us can play in what comes next. Because the future of shipping is not shaped by change alone, but by the people who choose to be part of it. As the journey continues, DNV's Maritime Forecast will remain a trusted source of insights for the industry and its people, sharing perspectives that turn uncertainty into confidence and knowledge into action on the path to 2050 and beyond.
This room live at the SMM in Hamburg, and of course also a warm welcome to everybody following us on the live stream. We've got thousands of viewers who've tuned in from across the globe, so thank you also to everybody staying online for the next hour. Also, what I hope will be interesting, insightful, and entertaining. My name is Anna Moschner. I'm leading communications and marketing for DNV Maritime, and as a proud Hamburg local, of course, it's really special for me to see the maritime community come together in my hometown, and of course also here in Germany, one of DNV's very important home markets. And it's my pleasure to get to host the 2026 edition of the Maritime Forecast to 2050 launch. Now, I hope you all agree that this year's edition comes at a particularly interesting time, let's call it that way, for the industry. And reflecting on what we've just seen the past decade, maybe decarbonization is somewhere, less high up on the agenda. Let's see, let's discuss later on. Then other topics that have taken center stage: security, energy security, geopolitics. So an interesting point indeed, not just for the industry really, but for the world. And still, the direction of travel for our industry is clear. We need to work, we need to transition towards a safer, a smarter, and a more sustainable future. But of course, the route is anything but straightforward. We have regulations, and we will talk about that a little bit today, still evolving. We, of course, have uncertain fuel markets, very hard to predict. Technologies are progressing, however, at very different speed and at different scale across the different segments. And ship owners have to take very, very tough decisions on a daily basis, where to invest, when to invest, and really make decisions for assets that, of course, have to operate for decades to come. And as if that wasn't enough, we have the pending IMO Net-Zero Framework as well. So I'd say that all of these things really make the key question that we're trying to tackle in this year's report even more relevant and timely. How can shipping make robust fuel and technology choices when really very many different futures are still possible? We will not give you the answer today. I'm sorry to disappoint you, because we don't have it. And also, the Maritime Forecast does not pretend to have one answer or one solution for all ship owners, by no means. But what it does give, or what we've been trying to do for the past 10 years, is really to give the industry data, to give it scenarios, and to offer practical tools that will help ship owners take more informed decisions in times of uncertainty. And one more thing I would like to mention, and the video, of course, gave it away. I just said it. It's the 10th anniversary of the Maritime Forecast to 2050. We're quite proud of that achievement, I must say. And we had many fantastic colleagues over the years really diving into the data and coming up with key insights and recommendations for the industry. And what I've observed over these past 10 years is really that the conversations have evolved from ambition to action, to what really can be done on the practical note, on the implementation side. And I guess the challenge that we're faced with at this point in time really is, how can we keep making that progress even when the pathway is not yet fully settled? How is then the big question, and that is exactly what we're trying to tackle with our experts on stage today. We will also get to hear it from the IMO, and I have a wonderful panel lineup as well, hopefully putting this into perspective and sharing a little bit from the kind of daily operational side, how to manage the uncertainties ahead of us. That's it. So I'd say we have an excellent program, and I will very quickly talk you through the speaker list, and then we just get started. So in a moment, I'm very happy to hand over to our DNV Maritime CEO, Christina Sayens de Santa Maria, who will kick us off with some opening reflections. Øyvind Sekkesæter with us here today. He's the lead author of this year's edition, and he will, of course, share the key findings and also some recommendations to the industry. And then after that, certainly one of the highlights of today's event, we will continue what I by now call a tradition, a conversation between DNV and the IMO. Knut Ørbeck-Nilssen, our group president and CEO, will speak to Arsenio, Dominguez, the Secretary General. And I can promise you that's usually not just interesting, but also quite entertaining. And finally, I will be joined by four industry leaders. We will do a proper round of introductions later on to really discuss what it means in practice, how you are navigating uncertainty, investing in energy efficiency as well, and more generally speaking, how are you preparing for the fuels and technologies ahead. And after that, of course, there's also time outdoors to continue the conversations, to network, and hopefully have a good chat. And with that, whether you're sitting here in the room with us in Hamburg or whether you are on the line, I hope you're comfortable. You can now sit back, relax, and listen very, very closely. We are, of course, delighted to have you with us today. So with that, let us begin. Before handing over to Christina, we've prepared a short video for all of you to take a look at what this year's edition is all about.
Shipping's energy transition is moving forward, but the rules shaping it are still unclear. That uncertainty is already reshaping how ship owners plan, invest, and operate. Regional regulations are driving real-world decisions on fuel, operations, and cost. But international alignment remains unresolved. In this environment, success depends on preparing for a range of possible futures. Ship owners must take decisions today that remain robust in an uncertain and fragmented landscape. This year's Maritime Forecast to 2050 explores how shipping's transition could unfold across different regulatory and fuel market conditions. Through 4 distinct regulatory scenarios, from global alignment to prolonged gridlock, the report sets out how each future could reshape fuel demand, investment signals, and the pace of decarbonization. While a wide range of new fuels and technologies will ultimately drive shipping towards its ambitious goal of achieving net zero by 2050, across all of the scenarios, one immediate priority stands out. Energy efficiency is the most immediate and cost-effective lever for reducing emissions, cutting fuel consumption, and limiting exposure to rising costs. By 2050, improvements in vessel design and operations could bring energy use across the global fleet down by up to 25%. At the same time, the transition to low greenhouse gas fuels is progressing, but scale will depend on the strength and clarity of regulatory signals. By 2030, demand could be as low as 4 million tons, or rise more than 5-fold to 22, depending on the confidence those signals create. Looking further ahead, the challenge shifts from choice to availability. By 2050, demand for low greenhouse gas fuels could exceed 2,000 million tons of oil equivalent across all sectors. For shipping, the challenge will be clear: securing enough fuel at the right time and at a cost the industry can carry. What is decided today will shape how well fleets adapt tomorrow. To move ahead, ship owners need strategies that can withstand uncertainty. In response, the Maritime Forecast presents a stepwise framework for better managing transition risk and cost, helping ship owners assess fuel and technology choices across different futures. Because those who stay flexible will be best positioned to move forward with confidence.
Hello, good day everyone, and warm welcome. Moin Maritime. The shipping energy transition continues, but the pathway is still taking shape. The operational environment in which the industry is living is quite different than a couple of years ago, with the geopolitical instability, with technology disruptions, and decarbonization, all reshaping the industry at the same time. This political volatility is creating challenges for supply chain, trade flows, and also seafarer safety. We have digitalization and AI giving the industry opportunities, but also risks. And then we have decarbonization, which is progressing, though at different paces depending on the fuel, on the geography, and the ship type that we are talking about. So, the challenge here is not a lack of ambition. It's actually how to make decisions in an increasingly complex environment. Shipping is a global industry, and as such, global alignment matters. Regional regulations are already shaping investment decisions and operation and fuel choices. So with just regional regulations, we are actually increasing the fragmentation, increasing complexity, compliance costs, and an uneven playing field. The industry needs regulations that provide predictability, that are fuel and technology neutral, and that provide practical implementation mechanisms. The industry needs a global framework so that we can all move in the same direction. So where are we today in terms of decarbonization? Well, actually, the progress is real, but as I said before, it very much depends on the geography and the type of fuel and the type of ship segment that we are talking about. We're seeing that approximately 10% of the global sailing fleet has alternative fuels capabilities. That number increases to 40% when it comes to the new building order book. In terms of fuels, LNG takes a dominant position. Methanol is starting to create some momentum, and then there are a few projects on ammonia and hydrogen. So what does this tell us? It tells us that there's not one single silver bullet that is going to help the industry. And ship owners are taking different pathways depending on their trade, their operational profile, and their ship type. The complexity as well is that the vessels that are ordered today will operate in 2040 and 2050. Means that the decisions that we take today will determine the resilience and the competitiveness of fleets in 2040 and 2050. So it's complex choices. But in this uncertainty, one thing stands out, and that's energy efficiency. That stands out as a solution for ship owners that will create value irrespective of how the future will look like. Another thing very clear for this industry is that there's no one stakeholder that can do this transition successfully alone. Ship owners, port operators, fuel producers, infrastructure developers, regulators, all play a critical role. And progress or lack of in one area influences progress or lack of progress in another area. And that's specifically relevant for fuel producers and infrastructure developers. So it's important that we continue to work together with collaboration, with coordinated action plan, so that we can accelerate this transition at scale. As my colleague Anne said before, we published the 10th edition of the Maritime Forecast. And I think that we could be quite proud as well as the journey that the shipping industry has had in the decarbonization, because it hasn't been a journey without disruptions. We have had the pandemic, we have had the war in Ukraine, challenges in the Red Sea, and you name it. But still, we have progressed. But we cannot just look back. We need to look ahead. And to look ahead, we need to continue with this momentum to create a global framework. We need to act now on energy efficiency solutions. We need to keep fuel and pathways open, and we need to work together, the different stakeholders as an industry, because the coming decade is the decade for scaling solutions, building confidence, and turning progress into lasting transformation. And with that, thank you very much, and I will pass it to this year's lead author, Øyvind Sekkesæter. Øyvind, the floor is yours.
The Maritime Forecast to 2050 is one out of DNV's Energy Transition Outlook reports. And as was mentioned previously, this is the 10th edition where we provide an updated outlook on the fuel and technology transition in shipping, and also what is driving it. This year, we focus on a central challenge. How can ship owners identify robust fuel and technology strategies to navigate an uncertain transition? The uncertainty is driven by an unclear regulatory future, an evolving technological landscape, both of which will impact the fuel market, including prices and availability of low greenhouse gas fuels. The best path forward will vary by ship owner, meaning there is no one-size-fits-all solution. We first turn to regulations. Regional regulations are growing in importance. Most notably, the EU ETS and Fuel EU Maritime, each covering close to 15% of the world fleet's emissions, are already today incentivizing emissions reduction. We also have other regional measures, such as the UK ETS and carbon taxes in Gabon and Djibouti. Looking ahead, the regulatory landscape looks uncertain. More regional regulations could emerge, while at the same time, negotiations on the Net-Zero Framework continue in the IMO. Multiple regulatory futures are possible. We have drawn up 4 potential scenarios centered on IMO regulatory developments out of many possibilities. In the first 2 scenarios, the Net-Zero Framework is adopted either in its current or in a modified form, eventually becoming the main driver of maritime decarbonization. In scenarios 3 and 4, on the other hand, the Net-Zero Framework is rejected and further international greenhouse gas regulations are delayed or in a gridlock. The eventual outcome of these regulatory scenarios will have a huge impact on shipping's fuel and technology transition. For example, in scenario 1, where the Net-Zero Framework is adopted, we project a global low greenhouse gas fuel demand of up to 185 million tons of oil equivalents by 2050, if this is sufficiently incentivized by the regulation. In scenario 4, on the other hand, where the Net-Zero Framework is rejected and no further international global greenhouse gas regulations enter into force, we project a demand more limited to 33 million tons of oil equivalents in 2050. You can also see that the scenarios differ in terms of the world fleet energy use, with scenario 1, with stricter regulations, having a 25% lower annual fuel consumption than scenario 4 in 2050, as a result of greenhouse gas regulations incentivizing uptake of energy efficiency measures. Now, there are many ways to achieve emissions reductions in shipping. These range from operational and technical energy efficiency measures to alternative fuels, shore power, and others. While some measures depend on strong greenhouse gas regulations to create a viable business case, some measures do not, among which we find several energy efficiency measures, reducing fuel consumption and emissions. To fully tap the potential of these measures, it's important to consider retrofit. To illustrate this, we have carried out a case study looking at a 5,000 TEU container ship retrofitting a new bow, a new propeller, and a propeller boss cap fin, with a resulting fuel saving of 16% given this vessel's current operational profile, at a cost of around $2.4 million. Based on this, we have a payback period of 1 to 4 years, depending on fuel prices, with each line on the chart that you can see here representing one fuel price level based on historical VLSFO prices in Singapore. Moving on to alternative fuels. We have seen a tenfold increase in alternative fuel capable tonnage since 2050. And in terms of number of ships, we have seen a sixfold increase. This indicates that a transition is taking place in terms of the fuel technologies being applied by the fleet. The growth, though, is not consistent across different ship types. By number of ships in operation and on order, we see a wide range in alternative fuel uptake, from about 1% for bulk carriers to 26% for car carriers. These differences can be explained by several factors. For example, we see higher shares in trades dominated by customer-facing cargo owners. We also see higher shares in trades dominated by liner operations with predictable routes and time schedules. Alternative fuel capability does not equal alternative fuel use. And we can see that based on the LNG and methanol capable ships in operation today, that many do not use their full capacity to burn alternative fuels. Moving on to bunkering, we also see signs of a transition taking place on shore. Low greenhouse gas fuel bunkering has now taken place at least once in almost 90 ports worldwide. The most common fuel bunkered is biodiesel, including FAME and HVO, followed by liquefied biomethane and low greenhouse gas methanol. Still though, low greenhouse gas fuels only account for around 0.3% of today's maritime energy mix. To understand why this is, we now turn to the low greenhouse gas fuel market, more specifically, supply. We estimate that by 2030, decarbonizing shipping with low greenhouse gas fuels could cost between $180 to $1,290 per ton of CO2 not emitted. At the same time, global maximum supply could total about 270 million tons of oil equivalent across all sectors, though it will likely be lower due to projects being cancelled or delayed. Although looking beyond 2030, the costs for some of the low greenhouse gas fuels might decrease and the potential supplies may increase, we still have to remember that shipping will compete with other sectors for access to these fuels. The highest fuel volumes are likely to flow towards the sectors with the highest willingness to pay. Today, in shipping, the FuelEU Maritime regulation introduces a maximum willingness to pay of around $740 per ton of CO2 not emitted. This does not, though, create demand immediately, because there are other alternatives for complying with regulations such as the FuelEU Maritime. For example, the use of shore power, in the short term the use of LNG, and perhaps in the longer term the use of onboard carbon capture and storage, as well as nuclear propulsion. As a result, the low greenhouse gas fuel market and its development remains uncertain and tied to regulation. I think I'm going to need some help to move to the next slide. Thanks. Taking a step back, amidst the uncertainty in regulatory future, the evolving technology landscape, and its impact on the low greenhouse gas fuel market, how can ship owners identify robust fuel and technology strategies to navigate an uncertain future? One approach can be to use a scenario-based framework, starting with creating a set of fuel and technology strategies, then developing scenarios, and finally robustness checking each strategy within each scenario with respect to both risk and cost. We can illustrate this for a fleet consisting of 5 very large crude carriers operating today, all scrubber fitted. For simplification, we look at 2 strategies. Strategy A, where the owner keeps ordering scrubber fitted crude carriers to replace aging tonnage in the fleet, and strategy B, where dual fuel LNG new builds are phased in to the fleet. We can also consider 2 scenarios: a slow transition scenario, where the Net-Zero Framework is rejected and no further international greenhouse gas regulations take effect, and a rapid transition scenario, where the Net-Zero Framework is adopted and becomes the main driver of maritime decarbonization. Moving on to the robustness check, we can first consider risk. A structured risk assessment can be carried out, inspired by a hazard, to identify operational, charter, compliance, and other risks that might have a cost impact for the 2 strategies. Many such risks can be identified. For example, in particular, for the strategy involving further ordering of scrubber-fitted ships, more bans on open-loop scrubber use can constitute a major risk. Likewise, for the strategy with phase-in of new-build LNG-capable ships, the well-to-tank greenhouse gas intensity for LNG set under international regulations could also be a risk. Moving on to cost, we find that for this specific VLCC fleet case that the LNG strategy outperforms the scrubber strategy by 14% in 2050 in the rapid transition scenario in terms of cost. If you look at the slow transition scenario, on the other hand, we find that strategy A, with further ordering of scrubber-fitted ships, actually has a lower cost than the other strategy due to lower capital and fuel expenses. In practice, final decisions should test more strategies across more scenarios, reflecting different regulatory futures. And the outcome will vary by ship owner, depending on their fleet, trade pattern, and other factors. Getting to the end, a recap of our key findings. First, several regulatory futures remain possible as the IMO continues negotiations on the Net-Zero Framework. Energy efficiency can pay off regardless of regulatory outcome. Decarbonizing with low greenhouse gas fuels costs between $180 to $1,290 per ton of CO2 not emitted in 2030, requiring regulations to scale up demand. Finally, robust technology and fuel strategies are needed to navigate an uncertain transition. Our recommendations to ship owners are to accelerate energy efficiency across existing ships and new builds, to consider all compliance options where exposed to greenhouse gas regulations, and to use scenario-based fleet planning to guide fuel and technology strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Øyvind. Great job presenting the key findings, and great job, of course, to the entire Maritime Forecast team, because this is a team effort, and there is a lot more in the forecast document, which I recommend you all download at dnv.com, and you in the room may be amongst the lucky ones. You will get an email with a download link directly to your mailboxes as well, so I recommend you check it out when you have the time. And one of my takeaways from the presentation and from the report really is that uncertainty is not a good reason to stand still. It's really a reason to test your choices more carefully, to invest in the measures that already pay off today and that make sense today, and of course also to prepare for more than just one possible future. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and with that, we will move to our next slot. I promised you to continue a tradition on stage. It's time for the conversation between DNV and the IMO. And some of you may have had the chance to listen to Knut and Arsenio on stage before. I can promise you that they're usually trying to be strategic. Sometimes they're challenging. Occasionally they're provocative. And luckily for all of us, it's usually a lot of fun. A year ago, I remember at London International Shipping Week, it was a bit of a different conversation. I remember, Arsenio, you promised us to come back no matter what the outcome of the vote on the IMO Net-Zero Framework would look like. So thank you for holding your promise. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm round of applause for Arsenio, Dominguez and Knut Ørbeck-Nilssen, please.
Would you care for some water, perhaps?
Later.
Later. Yeah, so ladies and gentlemen, it's great to be here with Arsenio and at this 10th anniversary, actually, of the Maritime Forecast. And although it's the 10th time, I must give my compliments to Christina and Øyvind for really good presentations. Well done to both of you. Round of applause, perhaps. And it's good to see so many. It's a full room, and we are so lucky to have Arsenio Dominguez, the Secretary General of the IMO, with us. So welcome to you as well, Arsenio.
Thank you.
I remember in London, if I remember correctly, we talked about shoes.
We did, and you're not wearing trainers anymore.
So at that time I said I needed some
disappointed.
fast shoes because the environment was changing so fast. But you see, I put on more stylish shoes as the environment is not changing as fast. But let that aside, and we will start on a much more serious note. So usually when we have these dialogues, we talk naturally about decarbonization, about regulatory developments. But this time I would like to start with a grim situation of the seafarers. And we all know the situation they're in, the Black Sea, the Red Sea, now in the Middle East, and not least through the Strait of Hormuz. And I know that this is also very high on your agenda, and in the IMO, you have been very vocal about this, raising the awareness. And my question is really, what more can you, DNV, and all the other stakeholders do to improve the situation for our seafarers?
Yeah, thank you, and I really appreciate that you're taking a step aside from the Maritime Forecast 2050 and the good presentations in relation to where we're going, how we're doing it, and how we're going to get there. We will get there. To talk about what is important, the needs, particularly the innocent seafarers that remain trapped in the Strait of Hormuz, 6 months now, no end in sight because of the root causes that are beyond IMO and the shipping sector are still not fully addressed. But the thing is, we still need, you ask me what can we do? We need to keep highlighting the importance of shipping that should not be used as collateral, that seafarers are innocent people that are there to actually trade for the benefit of everyone around the world, and we shouldn't let anyone to forget about this. One of the concerns that they always share with me is that there's a lot of emphasis, particularly on the media, on the impact of this war has on the economy. And we forget the human side of the conflicts because people don't see it. People at home are only affected when they can't receive the goods that they order online, or they go to the petrol station or the supermarket and all the prices are up. Just let these people know that they need to think about those seafarers that are making life possible for them as their relatives, to see how they feel it will be someone close to them actually trapped there for 6 months. From our side, continue to ask ship owners, ship operators not to sail in those dangerous areas, not to put seafarers and ships and the cargoes at risk. We still need to carry out, in particularly, risk assessment to make sure that it is possible not to transit these high-risk areas. There's several, you mentioned them, including Somalia, the coast of Somalia and the Gulf of Aden. 6 cases of piracy, 6 vessels that have been hijacked in the last couple of months. So the more that we keep this visibility of the negative impact of shipping and how this negative impact is affecting every single person around the world in every country, regardless if they are involved or not in the conflict, would allow us again to push at the higher level for solutions.
That's a very good call of action. And I can only encourage all of us in this room and beyond to talk more about the seafarers, and not only, as you say, about the financial impacts and the like. They need that attention and awareness. Now, turning to a usual topic, regulatory developments, and not least decarbonization. As we speak, and I think you pointed to that during the opening conference, that actually the greenhouse gas group in the IMO is now in session as we sit here. And we all know it's been a lot of challenges in the past year. How would you describe sort of the state of the discussions and the way forward as you see it from the IMO?
We're still looking at how to maintain the progress. The challenges ahead on the conversations. And if I looked at, can I use the presentation because I thought it was very good, even though we're still making references to the vote. I don't know why we're still talking about a vote, but it's fine. I like it. It keeps people engaged. We're not voting. We're trying to avoid a vote. On the presentation, we look at the slow and the rapid approach, right? In order to take the next steps and to provide the guidance for the sector and how to make the investment, etc., which I think is very pertinent. For me, it's more of the progressive. It's the one in between. It's moving ahead on areas of convergence, and if we look at the technical measures, that of course they will support any economic measure like the fuel standard. We're moving ahead with that. In particular, progress was made in the previous GHG intersessional meeting. I think it was in April this year. Now we have proposals on the table, the net zero framework that was adopted, and other proposals in order to address those gaps. And this is where we also need to be flexible and creative. Yes, the net zero framework is the proposal that we have on the table. What is important now is where we can find the common areas to make the progress, including on economic measures, how they can be implemented, even if we just scale them or put them in a progressive manner as well, so they don't come into force altogether, and how we actually assist in providing that additional guidance that everybody wants. However, I do want to say something. As we make progress, and this is also highlighted in the presentations, is the steps that are taken from the sector itself. Because we've been asked to provide clarity. Now, the main clarity is there. We have the goals for decarbonizing, aiming at 30% for 2030. So that's not a secret. Equally, 70 to 80% for 2040, and decarbonizing by around 2050. So the projections, the business models can be based on that. You've seen how there is an uptake at a six-fold in relation to alternative fuels. There's an increase of dual fuel orders of the new vessels. So we see those progressive ones coming on board. Yes, there's still the imbalance when it comes to the scalability, the pricing, and that's one of the areas that we wanted to address with the economic measures. But we also need the experience, and we have already rolled out the safety guidance for the fuels, and we are working on the training requirements for those fuels, particularly for the seafarers. So we're not idle, and this is the same message that I would like to send to the rest, that there are steps that can be taken, information that can come to us, and we'll keep the flexibility that we've been required to have on to being open to any type of technologies and any fuels. And one of the areas that were discussed today as well, I think you highlighted it, that it's just not one technology, that there's a combination of technology and efficiencies. We still can gain 16% on efficiencies from the report, which means that all the work that we've done since 2011, there's still areas for us to bring everyone on board on the efficiencies. So, we're making progress. It's not at the speed what it was expected before. Geopolitics have changed around the world, but it doesn't mean that we're still not committed to actually achieve the goal of decarbonizing by or around 2050 and continue to introduce periodically and progressively measures that would allow us to get there.
Excellent. And I think this is a great point, because we are making progress and we've come a long way if we go back 5 or even 10 years. It's a realization that we have to go on this journey on decarbonization. One of the takeaways from the presentation was also that regulatory uncertainty is delaying investment decisions. And we talked also earlier this morning about the infrastructure, lack of fuels, the willingness to invest in dual fuel technologies, etc., etc. And obviously that leads to the question, are we, by having these uncertainties, delaying the transition, and will we be able to catch up if this delay goes on?
Oh, that's an interesting question now. You're putting me on the spot. I wouldn't see it as a delay on the transition. The goal remains the same. And, things will happen and start developing. The moment that the technology continues to scale up, the moment that there's more agreements in relation to some of the measures that we're putting on the table, again, if I go back to the fuel standard, we will start making additional progress. At the same time, of course, is the experience that we'll be gathering on implementing all these measures. We can look at new technologies that are coming up, or energy sources like nuclear as well as IMO. But I wouldn't put it, and I know that some of you will think that I'm saying this just as a way out for myself, but it's not the case. Don't take it like that, and don't be offended by this. At times we're asked for a certainty on the regulations, in that without the regulations you will not make the investments. Other times we're asked not to regulate. You want the flexibility, you want to make the investments. So it's always a balancing act. It's when it becomes difficult for me to say, well, you can't use it as an excuse when you know where we're going, where the goal has been set. And an example was a presentation from the minister from India this morning. Talked about how much they are investing, not only in port development, but port infrastructure, including creating their own, developing their own fuels, focusing on hydrogens and ammonia, the bunkering facilities to be a producer and a supplier at the same time. They have a vision for 2047, if I remember correctly. They see the investment now, and of course the profits will come later on. So they have developed the business model, and they're moving away from reliance on energy sources that they cannot control. If you link that to the shortage of supply of heavy fuel oil coming from the Middle East, then you have other countries that are taking the opportunities. Again, it's how we as an industry continue to look at the areas where we can do better rather than just the excuses for not doing something. I take it. It is an investment. But if we don't invest, another thing that was mentioned is that others will compete for this type of fuels, for these new technologies. Then what we will do, start coming back and saying, well, I can't do it now because nothing is coming to the shipping sector. Well, we didn't ask for it at the beginning. And we're a huge market. We can actually take the steps and drive those costs, drive the investment, and actually then bring the profit back to the sector. Because there's still a profitable industry. We've seen that regardless of the conflicts around the world, 3 conflicts, probably 45, analyze another one differently. The projection is that at least growing for just over 1%. When before the conflict, it was 2.2% until 2030. So there is areas for us to invest in the sector. There is areas to be leaders. And of course, those that can take the first steps will be the ones that can guide the others. And bit by bit, we will achieve the goal. And we won't stop at IMO the regulations. For as difficult as it is, the diamond, he's going to share with you the diamond example. I really like it. But we will get there. He called us a diamond at IMO. Basically, that's the bottom line.
Okay. I'll share with them the phrase that I used then during the opening conference. So Arsenio's job and those at the IMO is a little bit similar to breaking diamonds with your hands. We all know diamonds are very hard, difficult to scratch the surface. But there is a duality to that, and that is that diamonds are not very tough. And with a significant impact, you can actually break diamonds. So that was the sort of phrase that I used, and I hope that you like it. You are the diamonds of a regulatory industry.
Are you suggesting that I bring a hammer at IMO and start just...
Bring whatever tool you need to, get that impact. I think that's what I'd say.
I also said to him that diamonds are very desirable, and everybody wants to have a piece of it. So it means that there's a lot of interest in what we're doing.
But we have to let the diamonds go for now. Sorry about that. But let's also return a little bit to your starting point, because it's also a lot about geopolitics, as you mentioned, disruption of trading routes, sanctions. We also have the infamous shadow fleet. And how do you see all of that sort of impacting not only the lives of the seafarers, but also the developments that we are talking about now?
We've been going for the last 6 years, I will say, through a challenging period in shipping. In the past, there've been conflicts, There have been accidents and incidents that have put us on the spot, and we have come around. But in this time, we started with COVID. We continued to operate detrimentally to the seafarers. Then it was the Black Sea situation, Russia and Ukraine. Then it's the Red Sea, the Houthis. And immediately, we haven't finished one, and we move into the Middle East, and particularly the Strait of Hormuz. We have maintained the operations, and that's something that shipping should be proud of. It has created more visibility on how everyone really relies on shipping, and the famous phrase of no shipping, no shopping is actually having a global impact for everyone that, in a sense, doesn't really know what shipping does, and they don't know that unless shipping operates, they won't get the mobile phones, the computers, the tables and the chairs for them to actually congregate with friends and family. So with all those negatives, we have learned how to divert routes, how to take responsibility in supporting seafarers better, how to be more aggressive as well with some projections in the future, multimodal transportation or different areas for development in order to demonstrate that until you sort out your geopolitical situations, we can find a way to operate. Some will be affected more than others, but the message continues to be shipping is here to stay. We are resilient. We're ready to learn from all these difficult challenges. And we are now having conversations beyond shipping. Even myself, engaging at the levels that we were not doing before with other entities, other ministries, other UN agencies that continue to, even now, to confuse IMO with IOM, which is migration, even at the UN level. But let's take this opportunity. Let's use that visibility, not only to demonstrate how good we are, but also to show them that we're still driving for change, for progress, to be more sustainable, that we are green, can be greener, that we are safe and can be safer. But again, let's not stay gloomy. And that's something that shipping has done in the past as well. Whenever we face these challenges, we look forward to drive the sector through.
Yeah. Great input. And it's good that you remind us also that we are part of systems, right? The energy systems, the whole economic systems, the logistic chains that are so vital for the world to go around. You have already, pinpointed a lot of actions, but if you would like to share with the audience and the people online a key message or a call to action for ship owners, ship operators, shipbuilders, infrastructure, fuel providers, etc., what would it be?
Ouch. The first one is resilience. I think for the next few years, that's going to be key for us to maintain that resilience, operate, learn, and not to take risks when it comes to the crews and the ships on dangerous areas. Proactivity. I know that I've been saying this since the moment I became Secretary General, but in the sector, we are being more proactive rather than reactive. And that helps us not only at the IMO level when it comes to the regulations, but it helps the sector to be progressive and actually face the challenges from other modes of transportation that are also trying to tap on the market, in the sector. And in particular, let's start engaging more, and this is for everybody, the younger generation. We need to listen to them. I ask that in the future as a request, not a demand, as a request that in the future for gatherings like SMM, that we bring more seafarers and more younger people that are starting in the sector to see what they're expecting from us. What can we do to pave the way to improve how things are in relation to some of the factors that are beyond our control, but also to rate the work that we've been doing in the sector. For me at IMO, that's quite relevant because at some point we will have to hand over to the next generation. And that's a way to also attract them. We talked about shortages of seafarers, shortages of people coming into the sector. Automation is coming in. It's not to replace people. And I like the way that you put this forward and you speak my language there. This is to make our jobs easier, better, safer, more efficient, more sustainable. That's how we should actually focus and looking at the new technologies. And whenever I have the opportunity to travel and meet cadets, which is one of my favorite parts of my job, there is a lot of them that are looking forward to be part of the sector. But they also want to be recognized. They want to be valued. And we need to invest in people in order to attract them and retain them.
That's a very inspirational way to end this conversation, Arsenio. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please give Arsenio a big hand of applause. Thank you.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Can we ask you to take a quick photo, the two of you?
And we're going to do trainers next year. Or next time. We'll do trainers next time.
Let's do that.
Can you smile? Yeah, that's good. And another one. And like.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Arsenio.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Another round of applause, please. And I hope I haven't promised too much. I think this was indeed, again, very insightful and very entertaining. And we even managed to touch upon shoes and diamonds. And Arsenio, you're still in the room, so I hope we can let you make another promise to be back next year. So then I hope I see you in London. In trainers, that's a promise. Excellent. Wonderful, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've heard about the different scenarios, about the status of things, both from Christina and from Øyvind. We've now gotten the global regulatory perspective as well. And now I think it's time to add the missing piece to the discussion, because now we would like to turn to the people that indeed have to navigate this on a daily basis. Companies, of course, have to take investment decisions. These are rather difficult given all that's going on. You know, you need to decide which technologies you're going to back, how to manage the fuel risk, and of course, maybe most importantly, how to keep delivering to your own customers, given, you know, that there is constant change all around us. So now it's time for our panel discussion, and I please ask you to join me in now welcoming our panelists to the stage. Please, Harald Fotland, Konstantin Bach, Stratos de Cyprus, and Sarah Rawlings, if you could join me for the panel discussion. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Find your seats. And then let's dive right in, because we don't have a lot of time, because I know also everybody's schedule is packed this week. But of course, I'm really looking forward to your reflections. You're obviously representing different parts of the industry. So let's maybe start with that to make my job very easy as a panel host. If I could ask you to introduce yourselves very quickly with your roles and maybe one sentence or two about the companies you're representing. Konstantin, should we just take the tour?
Absolutely. Good afternoon from my side. My name is Konstantin Bach. I'm CEO of MPC Oceanic Group, formerly known as MPC Capital. We are a maritime service and investment company. We manage technically, commercially, or also with performance management around 450 ships through our subsidiaries. And we are also an investor, active investor in the space. And we have an investment business, amongst others, in container shipping. And I'm also CEO of MPC Container Ships, and we own container ships in the range of 1 to 7,000 TEU, 68, including new builds. And I'm looking forward to the discussion today.
Great. And I'm Sarah Rawlings. I'm a strategic client director working with Shell Marine. So working with our shipping customers within the space we're talking about today on where are they looking to go in the energy transition, and what's the right strategy for them, and what are the solutions that Shell can support them with, especially around marine fuels, which Shell has a lot of touch points in the marine ecosystem. So sitting here today more from the fuel supplier perspective, but we do also operate a chartered fleet of LNG carriers, product tankers, and crude tankers, as well as through our robust shipping and maritime group. We offer marine fuels globally, LNG globally, bio-LNG globally, which I'm sure we'll get into, and our marine lubricants. So thank you, and thank you for the invitation to join today.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Anna. Good afternoon to everybody. My name is Stratos de Cyprus. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Navios Maritime Partners. I've been with Navios for over 20 years now. Navios is a fully integrated shipping entity which holds a diversified fleet of 177 vessels across 3 segments, across dry bulk, tankers, and container ships. And roughly we have 1/3 on each each of the segments that we operate, with a fleet value of over 10 billion today. and a very big new building program. We're in the middle of a new building program of 62 vessels. We have roughly taken delivery of half of them. And this is one of the steps that we're taking towards, decarbonizing our fleet.
Thank you. Harald?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harald Fotland, and I'm the CEO of Odfjell SE, which is a chemical tanker company based in Bergen, Norway. And we operate a fleet of 75 deep-sea chemical tankers.
Excellent. Thank you for doing that. And I hope you agree that we have an interesting panel up here, obviously, especially representing different segments, and also looking forward to the fuel producer perspective from Sarah there. Now, let's kick it off with one question for all of you. So we will do a little tour. Maybe we do it backwards. So Harald, you get to start in a moment. And this is an easy one to start with. So we've spoken a lot already today about all that's happening around us, that's adding to the uncertainty, be it geopolitics, be it regulations, the evolving technological landscape, the uncertainty around fuel availability, price, you name it. So given all that, what's your plan? How do you prepare and navigate for this uncertain future? Just an easy one to start us off. Harald, please.
I would say that among all this uncertainty, our focus is on doing what we are best at, to focus on our core business. That's how we manage the situation today.
Great. Straightforward. Stratos.
For us, our approach is that we still remain fuel and propulsion technology agnostic. And the industry has not defined a strategy yet on fuel, a definite strategy. So when you have to invest in a vessel that has a useful life of 20, 25 years, I think that you need to make sure that you have the confidence that the technology you are using is the technology that will take you through the useful life of the vessel. I heard a lot about excuses, and I would say that this uncertainty is not an excuse for inaction, actually. And there is an area that we can act with a certain degree of confidence, and this is the efficiencies. And actually, we have been doing that in Navios. We have a strategic priority on, decarbonizing our fleet, either through our day-to-day operation or through our new building program. And in pursuit of this decarbonization and efficiency, we are taking two connected pathways, I would say. The one is the maintenance of a very young fleet. Today, we have a fleet with an average age of 8.7 years. This is 40% below the industry average. And when it comes to tankers, this is approximately 70% below the industry average. So we take advantage of all the latest technological advances on the vessels, but also we take advantage of the efficiencies that these vessels provide. And the second path that we are using is also we are evaluating, monitoring, and investing in new technologies ourselves, either through adapting these technologies or through participating in various initiatives. We are participating, for example, in initiatives with MIT, with Merck. These are initiatives that they seek for alternative solutions as a pathway forward. So our approach is very simple: act decisively where the solution is there, and maintain your optionality where the technology is not yet in a scale that can be relied upon.
Excellent. So what I took away was no excuses and a very simple strategy forward. Excellent. Sarah, please.
I liked how you classified this as the easy question first.
Yes.
But I promise I did not coordinate my answer before, because I think in the period of uncertainty, it is creating that optionality. And the optionality, then how does that enable decisions to take? And for me, sitting in Shell Marine, it actually takes me back, my analogy takes me back to standing bridge watch in the Navy. And how do you take all of those dynamic inputs into the actionable commands that you give your bridge team? So then coming back here, your inputs being what's going on in regulatory, regionally, globally, what's going on with fuel prices, availability, how is the geopolitical actions impacting those? And then what do you hear on the radio? So talking to DMV, your stakeholders, what are you seeing on your radar that maybe isn't in your field of vision, but you know is coming, like investments and growth that you're looking towards? And then bringing that picture together to actually take those actions, to give those commands to your bridge. And so for us at Shell Marine, it was looking at what is that pathway and looking to the methane pathway, going from LNG to bio-LNG to ELNG and having a clear pathway to net zero and then acting upon it. So working with the Green Corridor, so Singapore-Rotterdam Green Corridor that we're part of under that banner, working with CMA for trialing bio-LNG. That was, I think, 2022. We did our first one, which was the physical liquefaction. But more importantly, then how do you actually validate liquefaction by equivalence, which is a key enabling factor to the methane pathway and being able to scale. So I think those are the pieces that you can bring it together, even though there's a lot going on, and still take those actions and do it in a two-way communication, do it with your stakeholders to move forward.
Thanks for that. And what I hear, and maybe there's consensus, of course, collaboration is key and proactivity is too. Konstantin, your easy strategy for the way forward.
There's quite some consensus here on the panel, and what I do think is what we do is we do what we can control ourselves and not what we can't control. We can't control the IMO timeline, we can't control fuel price in 2030, but we can control efficiency and modernization of the fleet in order to bring down consumption, which is a monetary benefit for everyone. You just need to distribute that properly, but also has a positive impact on emissions, obviously. So we have, over the last 5 years, started with 100% conventional fleet, vintage fleet, I would say, and have done basically 3 strategic pillars. One is invested in new, more efficient ships, including dual fuel ships at times. However, there the risk and reward sharing needs to be carefully considered, but we have 3 methanol vessels on the water. We have a number of other new buildings on order, conventional, but more efficient in any case. Secondly, we have invested in eco vessels, so younger vessels. And thirdly, and very importantly, efficiency measures. And we have heard one statistics just at the presentation earlier, 16% saving on a 5,000 TEU. I can tell you that at least on our fleet, the feasibility studies, and we are going down to 1,700 TEU, have shown 15 to 30% in savings. As a matter of fact, we're more 30 to 35% because of the trading pattern. It obviously boils down to the trading pattern, but we have done those retrofits with more than 25 ships, hand in glove with our chartering partners, and the savings speak for themselves. So I think we are agnostic when it comes to fuel. We believe that the fuel that you don't burn today is actually the best fuel, right? It's the best saving. It is the easy solution. It is something that where you put money to work and not stand still, but progress. And that's how we approach fleet renewal.
Thanks for that. And if I'm not mistaken, Harald, you're probably in agreement when it comes to the topic of energy efficiency. And I really want to get the Odfjell perspective there, because indeed it's one of the strongest messages in the Maritime Forecast this year that energy efficiency is really becoming increasingly important. And yes, as you just pointed out, it obviously delivers benefits independent of the regulatory landscape ahead. Harald, now Odfjell is widely regarded as one of the leader in energy efficiency and operational performance. I'd be curious to hear your view on how you still, or where you see the biggest opportunities for the global fleet when it comes to energy efficiency. And maybe if I may attach a follow-up question, how has the rising fuel cost and also the prospect of course, more expensive low greenhouse gas fuels influenced your willingness to invest in these somewhat pricey, capex-heavy efficiency measures?
Thank you. I think I have to start by saying that in Odfjell, we've been focusing on energy efficiency for almost 20 years. And during that period, we've improved our carbon intensity by 54%, which I think is world leading. And I would like to add that doing energy efficiency is like picking money from the street. It's the easiest money that my company make every year. And I would say that when it comes to opportunities, there are 2 important, I think, observations. The first observation is that the things that we did 15 years ago, those projects were experimental, they were pilots. Today, those products are off-the-shelf solutions that anyone can buy. And the second observation is that digitalization has made it much more easy to measure the energy consumption on board our ships, and also to determine where are the opportunities to make further energy saving opportunities. And the second one is that it's also much more easy to measure success, to measure whether you actually save fuel or not. And I think if you look at one of the projects that we did many years ago, which is the propeller boss captain that Øyvind mentioned during his presentation, that is a project with a down payment of less than 6 months. So from month 7 onwards, it's money in the bank. Another project that we did a couple of years ago was the installation of the first suction sails. That was a much more challenging project. When we started, we were discussing a down payment of 10 years. And that is not a particularly good project, but we decided to give the technology a chance. And then 2 things happened. The first thing was that the sails were more efficient than what we had been anticipating. And the second thing that happened was that the fuel price went up. So today the fuel price is more or less the double of what it was when we made the calculations, meaning that the sail projects that we conducted is now down to a down payment period of maybe 3-4 years, something like that. So that has also become a very healthy project, despite the fact that it was a risky project when we started. And then finally, I would just like to add that I said this is picking money off the street, but the question is who's picking the money? And that is a challenge if you want to really accelerate the transition, because if you have a time charter vessel, the charter is paying for the fuel and the ship owner is paying for the improvements. And then there has to be a better dialogue, I think, between all the stakeholders when it comes to how to do the investments and who's going to harvest from the investments. And that's maybe where we have the biggest upside. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. No, interesting reflection. I think you might have created a headline here for all the journalists in the room. So energy efficiency is like picking money from the street. It's very memorable. Thank you. Good points. And thank you for sharing your experience there. Okay, Konstantin, maybe I can move over to you and maybe talk a little bit about the challenge that we're facing with the fuel availability side of the story. Because as Øyvind has pointed out, and actually, I mean, we've talked about this for a few years now, that the technology transformation is well underway. So, shipping's ability to shift to low greenhouse gas fuels depends not only on the vessel readiness, because there we're making good progress, but of course also on viable fuel markets, and that's shaped by supply and cost and regulations. And not least also mentioned by Øyvind, cross-sector demand, because shipping is not the only industry competing for these types of fuels. So my question to you, I mean, you mentioned in your little introduction that you focus on what you can control and what you can influence. But still, maybe thinking beyond that, what are you looking for from fuel producers, maybe also regulators or other stakeholders, that would give you the confidence that these fuel markets can scale successfully?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, I must say, and honestly, a magic wand probably to ensure that we have fuel available all over the place at a proper price and one regulation throughout the world. But obviously, life is not that easy, and reality is much more messy. And I think the DNV report also referred to the chicken and egg constellation, where the producers need physical demand or to see demand, and shipping companies need to have the supply. So I think it is a situation where there's no one party on its own. I think that was also mentioned in the presentation. You need to collaborate, and you need to form partnerships and alliances for that matter. That's the one leg. I'll get to that in a minute, because there are in small examples already for this. But more generally, on the regulatory side, it's obviously predictable regulation. And I think we have all seen that is not present at this stage, unfortunately, for the various reasons. And it's also a level playing field, because we see different areas imposing different schemes, which does help in instances, but certainly makes it less easy to take decisions. So I think predictability of the regulation and the level playing field. And on the other side, when you look at partnerships and corporations, I mean, there are many institutions that have popped up, like the Mercer McKinney Center of Zero Carbon Shipping or others, where we are also an active member. I think that is a very good place to exchange views, to contribute, and also to take insights with you. Having said that, I think that doesn't really add the economics of the situation when it comes to new fuels. So what we have done, for example, is we have in 2022 ordered methanol ships. We have partnered up with both the cargo side, so a 15-year COA commitment, a 15-year charter, and we as an owner have ordered the ship. Luckily, by coincidence, or also a bit by design, there is green methanol available on that very trade. So it is a trade from Rotterdam up the Norwegian coast, and we are actually, and that is unfortunately linked to developments in March, April, where we saw MGO prices go through the roof. We have actually increased the composition of green methanol as part of that trade. So usually we trade with 5% green methanol there, and now we're up to 30%, because with all the benefits and credits, we have actually been 5-6% lower on cost on that very trade in that very period than with pure MGO. It's a very unique example, and it cannot be seen throughout the industry. But that's probably a good transition to hear from also the production side. What does it need in order for these small examples of partnership, of way to actually make use of the green fuels in an efficient way, admittedly in a very special situation, to grow that into the broader industry.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you for this wonderful transition over to Sarah, because of course we want to hear it from your side, and maybe also asking you, what is then the confidence or the signals that you need to give you the confidence to really invest more and to kind of scale up?
Yeah, I think starting similarly around the signals, and I'd love to take the magic wand and wave, and we have a global regulation. So it is watching the regulation, it is watching the IMO. So we have a global framework to be able to move forward. And for us, it underpins that demand signal that then gives confidence to sign longer term agreements and gives confidence to take investment decisions to actually for the fuel production and to scale it. I think that would be the signal to watch, but you also mentioned fuel production. And I think the other piece that we cannot forget is what else goes on to make sure that we have that delivery of the different pathways, and that's the supply chain and infrastructure, and that needs investment as well at a global scale or regional scale if you are looking at some of the segments. And so that's where I think for Shell, focusing on the methane pathway, looking at what LNG has done. LNG as part of the market network has gone in the last 10 years from 10% to 15%. So that's the case where we do see an advantage of leveraging what's going on within the LNG market to use that infrastructure for the fuel pathway, and then really focus on that last mile delivery. And that's what we've done, where it's the bunker vessels. So going from one bunker vessel when we started bunkering in 2018 to now having 16 bunker vessels on a global network. And so that's for us the investment not only in the molecule, but also the infrastructure, and doing it at pace to what the regulation is leading us. And so that's the other piece I think Arsenio talked about is the pace.
Thank you for that. And I mean, it's very unpredictable still to see how, what that pace will look like moving forward for sure. Thank you, Sarah. Stratos, you've been waiting patiently. Thank you for that. Now, obviously, well, let's assume fuel markets will develop successfully. I don't think it's a question of if, but when and how. But of course, we've talked about it all along. There is still a huge amount of uncertainty, which will be the most widely available fuel, most cost competitive, most attractive under what future regulation. Stratos Navios, as you pointed out when introducing the company, is obviously operating a diversified fleet across different segments. And I'd be just curious to hear, does your thinking around future fuels differ depending on ship type?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is
I'm
a
not
fair
surprised,
observation.
but please elaborate.
I think that we are in a situation that most probably will not have just one solution for every type of vessel. And just to give you an example, in our fleet, we have container ships that they are operating roughly in predictable liner routes. And on the other side, you have tankers or dry bulk vessels that the next voyage can take them to a totally different place of the world with totally different port infrastructure. So the question is not if the fuel exists somewhere in the world. It has to exist in the place that the vessel is trading. It has to exist in capacities that the vessel can take advantage, and it has to be in a commercially reliable, commercially reasonable cost that makes sense for these vessels. And we see it in our fleet as we operate across the 3 different segments. The commercial considerations and the trade considerations and the operating consideration that we see in every different segment is much more different. Now, on the commercial side, because I'm coming from a finance background, so I have to look on the commercial side, for us the question is, what is the technology that we will choose that will last for the life of the vessel? So the technology that it's not about just investing the capex today. This is something that you can easily do, but you have to make sure that you will have available fuel wherever the vessel is trading for its life. The regulatory and compliance environment has to be such that will allow the vessel to be for the 20-25 years of life. And then you have to assess the impact on the trading restrictions of the vessels, but also the residual value for the longer duration. So again, I think this brings us back to being able to have the optionality. I mean, the risk is not always moving too slowly, but there is also a risk of moving too early in a technology that cannot be scalable. So again, our philosophy is to try today and maintain a young fleet, take advantage of today's environmental benefits of the newer vessel, the more technologically advanced vessels, and prepare a fleet that has a lot of optionality to be relevant, commercially relevant at any scenarios that we see in the future.
Thank you for sharing. And to find that sweet spot, that's very difficult, right? Not moving too early, not moving too late, but I guess it's about moving at all in the end. So thank you for sharing your reflections. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, time's running. I have a final question for all of you, if I may, and then we will have to close the event very shortly. But this is an interesting one and another easy one for you, because as has been referenced today a couple of times, we're looking back at a decade of decarbonization transformation in shipping, and of course a lot has changed over time, and that's where we're finding us now in the middle of this kind of interesting period. Now, looking ahead another 10 years, what do you think will define the next decade of shipping's fuel and technology transition? And maybe what gives you the greatest confidence that indeed we will be able to progress? And here comes the catch. In your answers, you're not allowed to use the word uncertainty. Harald, please.
I would say that first of all, what we need today is a global regulation. A global regulation will be the catalyst for everything that is going to happen for the next decade. Secondly, I think that the last decade has shown us that we have been able to develop technology. So the solutions are in place. Today, it's a question of scaling those technologies that are already available to us. And thirdly, when it comes to what makes me optimistic, I think it's seeing what we have achieved over the past 10 years. So when I see all the fantastic projects and developments that are taking place among my fellow ship owners, I think that there is great hope for the next decade.
Thank you. Hope for the next decade. It's another fantastic headline. Thank you so much. Strategy view.
I would agree with Harald that over the last decade, we have seen the industry has developed a lot of solutions that they seem workable. So the next decade is about scaling them. And scaling is not that we have a fuel that is relevant for a specific engine. Scaling means to develop an ecosystem in which the whole process will take place. So we need to make sure production is there, distribution is there, port infrastructure is there, but also financing, insurance, and compliance regulation is there. And I think that shipping cannot do it in isolation. I mean, the maritime community has to act in concert on that. We need ship owners that are willing to invest in new technologies and take the next step. We need shipyards that they will translate the willingness of the ship owners in order to make vessels that are technologically advanced at a reasonable cost and at a scale that can be relevant. Financing and insurance is also important. We need banks, leasing houses, insurances to finance and insure these vessels. And actually, we need also classification societies to make sure that the new technology is safe. So I am very confident because shipping is an industry that can adapt. And although I don't see just one linear solution, I think that every generation of vessels that we are building, it's more efficient, more green. And I think if we move toward that path and also continue to invest in new technologies, we can achieve very good things even before we solve the final fuel question.
Excellent, thank you. So a lot of confidence on that side. Let's see how we move on. Sarah, please.
Also still with confidence. And I think similar, it's reflecting on the last decade. And I know I've talked a lot about the methane pathway. And similarly, when we started talking about LNG as a fuel, it was about cleaner air, less particulate. I think when I was having conversations with ship owners, we didn't even use the word decarbonization. We've come in the last decade very much into the energy transition and decarbonization, and how does that fuel as an alternative fuel create a pathway, the methane pathway, and it's then the confidence comes from the resiliency of the ability to respond, the ship owners to respond, fuel producers, and move pragmatically into choices and actions that move us forward. So I think we've demonstrated it already and will continue to do it going forward. So I see that confidence from the fuel producer space across the fuel solutions and working with the ship owners as well as the ecosystem.
Thank you. Super. Konstantin, final view.
Yeah, I think the last 10 years we have seen that ambition has been translated into action and into measurable action. I think many of the first movers have actually done quite well. And I think that is at least an aspect which creates confidence on my part that, you know, looking back, we have seen that people take action even in a loose technological, fuel and regulatory environment. So we have progressed, maybe not at the pace we have all hoped for, but we have progressed. Now looking forward, I do agree with everything that has been said in terms of scale and regulatory environment, but one very important thing in my view that we need to focus on, and it was subject of the discussion Knut had earlier, and that's the crews. And I think we should not underestimate the importance of, with all technology, regulation and ships and fuels, that we need the people. And I think this will be a big bottleneck, in particular with everything that is happening in the world at present. And not to pour water into the wine, but I'm a bit concerned about the geopolitical implications on progress, because we have seen that the last few years that it's hampering progress, and unless we find a solution and find regulatory consensus, there will be a bit of a slowdown of progress, unfortunately. And not using the word uncertainty, but with a lack of certainty, this is definitely an issue. So that's maybe not closing on a too positive note, but I think overall we're well on track, and ambition to action and now action to scale, and I think we're on a good path there.
Thank you. I think it was a very strong note to end on, and thank you also for mentioning the seafarers again. And that's a nice link, because actually, as a token of appreciation for your participation here today, we have donated in your names to the mission to seafarers, because of course that is a very good and important cause to support. A warm round of applause to our panelists, please. And if I may quickly ask you to join me for a photo. Yeah. And maybe Øyvind and Christina and Knut, would you like to join us for a quick photo opportunity? And don't run off. You get some closing remarks and advice. Closer.
Doing my best.
Is that okay?
Okay, give me a bright smile. You want certainty?
Yeah.
Perfect. My colleagues?
Yes.
Yeah, fine. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more round of applause. Thank you, everybody. So, I may have lost my final card, but I will do this just from the top of my head. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. This concludes the official launch of the 2026 edition of the Maritime Forecast to 2050. I've said before, it's available for download on dnv.com. And of course, you can reach out to a DNV expert of your choice at any point in time to discuss the fuel strategies, the energy efficiency potential of your fleets, We are around for some networking, of course. We're also around for the rest of this week here at SMM. You can find us in Hall B4, and we have some really interesting events coming up. So if you're interested in maritime cybersecurity, the related challenges and what to do, in this very room later today, we are hosting an interesting cybersecurity summit. Tomorrow morning, you're cordially invited to join us for the first ever China-Europe Maritime Summit that we're hosting together with the German Ship Owners Association and the Chinese Association of Shipbuilders. So that's also very, very interesting. And of course, we have loads of expert talks and whatnot happening at our booth. So please stop by. Thank you for being a fantastic audience, for joining us today. And I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Stay safe, take care, and goodbye.